Well, a game that's caught my attention from the European Cup is Vassily Ivanchuk, one of the top seeds, going down to Jon Ludvig Hammer, who I saw play actually at the London Classic last year, and I really do want to play in that London Classic in December again. It was an amazing experience playing it with the likes of Carlston in the Super GM tournament, but there was actually a FIDE Open which had a few GMs and IMs, and I played several title players over the I think it was 9 rounds. I played 5 title players, beating a couple of FMs, drawing with 1 IM, but losing to 2 or 3 IMs. But it was brilliant experience. But in that open section last year, so Hammer, who's from Norway, did exceptionally well. He really crushed a lot of the GMs there to win the open section, and he's defeated Ivanchuk. So let's see how in the European Cup. He kicked off with D4, and we have here a standard kind of Catalan type position, which is very popular at the moment. So White's offering that C pawn, which Black takes now. So can White regain that pawn with advantage? Well, he plays Queen C2, and he takes with his queen. So we see here the makings of pressure on the C file, on C7 in particular, which may be, you know, that C7 pawn is often the bane for Black, and maybe in my recent club game I had winning chances by playing on the C pawn tactically right to the end. But the C pawn sitting on the semi-open file is a source of pressure, and this game's very instructive actually, how White manoeuvres around that C pawn, especially this bishop later. We're about to see manoeuvres like this against it. Okay, so B5. Now this, as well as gaining a tempo on the queen, is wanting maybe to just exchange off these light square bishops to sort out this issue of the light square bishop developers, and also weaken White's squares around the king. But that pressure is only going to be effective if there's a lot of pressure after. And in this game, it was fine for White actually to allow the exchange of these 2 bishops. After bishop d2, he's starting his positional plan against the c pawn. So he's restraining c5 at the moment, unless Black wants to sack a pawn. But he's going to introduce this pin against the Black queen. So this is an interesting idea. So bishop e4 looks a bit annoying. The White queen stays on the c file, stays clamping down against Black playing for that c5 break. Bishop b7 again, and now queen c2, inviting a draw maybe. You know, what would happen? Bishop e4, queen c1 again, but Ivanchuk plays a different move, rook a7. Looks a bit awkward. So rook c1, and now bishop e4 again. This is the difference. The queen is now stopped from going to c1. So where can the queen head usefully? Well, actually, Jon plays queen b3. Okay. And now after bishop d5, it finds a nice square on e3, which the engines like. Slight advantage for White still. So from e3, it's actually exerting influence on c5 against that liberating break. Knight bd7, as though c5 is going to happen, but now the pawn is pinned. Okay, too late for c5. Bishop d6, and now knight c3. So White's continuing development. So maybe he's got a tactical target here, you know, if this kind of manoeuvre, but White can always play b3 maybe against that. So bishop b7, and now knight g5, so voluntarily offering the exchanges of these light square bishops. So Black takes, and Ivanchuk plays the nice looking queen a8 from that long diagonal, checking the White king. So queen f3, the queen's come off. White's got still pressure here. e5, but after e3, so let's have a look now. Black's under some pressure because of the c file. The semi-open c file is White's greatest asset. The rooks are not too well organised at the moment. White's rooks maybe are more prepared to sort of go to either c1 or d1 for this a rook. Okay. So White's slightly better at the moment, I would say. So bishop e7. Now we see this move knight e2, so immediately threatening the c7 pawn. And Ivanchuk actually reacts with rook e8. So is that a little trick move? White isn't c7 on. Let's check this position. So that's the question, why isn't c7 on? Let's just examine why. Engine check, rook takes c7 for example. Rook takes, bishop takes. Now knight d5 would be strong, hitting the knight on g5 and bishop on c7. Okay, so that'll be terrible for white, of course. Okay, the loose knight on g5, so king g2 first. So knight d5 is played now, hitting this knight directly, asking where to go. So knight goes to f3. Now it's here, engine checking this game, that e4 apparently, and black would have been fine in this game. For example, knight d2, bishop d6, apparently this is okay. Maybe this e4 pawn, although it looks vulnerable, it can potentially be supported with f5. White hasn't got the light square bishop to exploit this diagonal. So this might have been okay for Ivanchuk, but I don't know if he was in time pressure or something. But he allowed the pressure to mount up here. After bishop d6, white would like also semi-open, well, rather, pressure on the d file. So he takes on e5. A couple of times pieces come off. Now knight d4. Now this knight's got a very nice place on c6. It can start dragging these pawns as well. It can support e4s, maybe f4 and e5 later. So rook a8 to avoid a nasty fork of both rooks because of knight c6 coming up. Knight c6 anyway. Rook e6. Now white's increasing in advantage, I think, here because the rooks are just superior, and the c7 pawn is likely to be an issue soon. This bishop on a5 has been doing a very interesting job throughout this game so far. Knight b6, but now it's potentially a target because of knight c4. But white can play b3, and he does. So king f8, and now rook d1. So have a look at the rooks now. White's rooks are blasting down these C and D files. So there's pressure. There's bishop takes b6, always as an option at the most effective moment to be able to use. But mysteriously here, Ivanchuk seems to make his position far worse. I mean, his last move was a bit strange, king f8, and now he's like trying to get the king involved, which is usually a bad idea because you know, it's a vulnerable piece. So knight d4, and now white is actually using that king on e8 with his next few moves. e4 immediately threatens actually e5, and if bishop takes, then rook e1. So what is the king doing here? It's in the danger zone. So Ivanchuk plays rook g6. He's just, I don't know what he's doing with this bishop and rook. It looks to be very odd for Ivanchuk to have his pieces like in front of his pawns. Usually the pawns will be used to sort of batter and soften the king up a bit first. So now just e5, driving the bishop back, and also winning now finally safely that c pawn, because the little tactical trick on it doesn't seem to do anything now. Rook takes c7, knight d5 with tempo for knight f4, but the big question is, you know, so what about knight f4? So here there's bishop d8 challenging this spectator bishop finally on a5. But actually white plays a very nice aggressive move with his knight, not worrying about either a5 or f4. He just plays knight f5, so hitting that knight on d5, offering exchange. But black flicks in knight f4, king f3, and now bishop takes a5, g takes f4, and white's just basically nicely got, I think, a superior knight to bishop here. Nice rook on the 7th pressure. Potential, you know, joining with the other rook on the 7th. It's really a crushing position. So this is amazing, isn't it? That's not playing much sharp opening theory, just Catalan. We see white able to rack up victories in this opening through the accumulation of small advantages. So it's kind of the Steinitz theory in the form using the Catalan for that small gradual accumulation, and it's these the small advantages become crushing. So both rooks on the 7th now. After rook c8, just offering f7, which is taken, you know, there's a harmless check, king e4, and now Ivanchuk resigns. So a fantastic win for Hammer, who's at the moment 2-6-3-3, obviously going up. He's just beaten Ivanchuk 2-7-5-4. Let's have a look at this Catalan again. So it really demonstrates, the accumulation of small advantages, I think. First, temporarily, sacking that c pawn gives white the c file. Maybe black's, doesn't want to repeat with bishop e4, so he plays to keep on with rook a7. And then we see this interesting maneuver to e3 where it seems to be logically placed against that c5 break. And now this very nice idea, this bishop a5. So is this going to redefine play against black's c pawn in this opening? This bishop d2 to a5 maneuver, has it been played before? Possibly. I'm not such a great expert on the Catalan, but it seems very logical and smooth, this game. Bishop b7. So white voluntarily offers the exchange of bishops and the exchange of queens, but white's advantage is persisting here. Now this is the moment that maybe that maybe black could have sorted out some issues by playing e4 at the right moments, but at the moment e4 there's a c7 issue. He actually attacks the knight on g5, and here e4 would seem to be a necessary evil. So maybe Ivanchuk didn't like fixing his pawn structure. He wanted to keep it more fluid, but the fluidity came at a cost here. That white just seems to get nasty pressure going, especially this knight coming to c6 as the prelude to things, and now these pawns are just ready to march. This e pawn in particular is not fully restrained at the moment, as we'll see, especially with this king coming into the picture, which I think is a disaster just waiting to happen. Doesn't really help matters. So e4 with the imminent threat of e5. So rook g6 just getting out of the way, and the e5's played anyway. So the white's pawns start marching on this king side. The 3-2 over here has actually been neutralised, if you think about it, because of this semi-open c-file pressure. So white's got a potential runner here, these two pawns against this guy, so he can potentially also technically create a pass pawn in the centre, but that's not the key thing. That to win this game is getting the rooks on the 7th is one of the key ingredients. Once both rooks reach the 7th, black has just got a hopeless position here. This mighty knight on f5 as well, threatening to win more material with knight g7, for example. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.